Hey, for Monday, August 24th, 2020, this is the Pro and Con Show, and I'm your host, Michael James Ott. As always, welcome to the show. So, Pro and Con, good and bad, for and against. So the reason why I'm doing the shows is to try to stimulate some people to think more about the responsibilities to themselves and to their neighbors and friends and family members as far as being better citizens, and to understand that it's a big mistake to oversimplify these complex issues and and to not think them through. There's two patterns of decision making. There's a kind of a short term decision making kind of thing, and then there's a long term. And if you just use the short-term decision making, which is like reaction to a few words or someone's rhetoric or something like that, and you allow yourselves to be overcome or to go ahead and make that snap judgment, those judgments are just known to be far less appropriate in the long term for you than if you were to sit back and say, well, wait a second, should I really be this angry because somebody said something that I don't agree with? Should I really allow myself to fall into this trap of believing one person's opinion without stepping back and trying to figure out a little bit more about what's going on? And it's the difference if there's someone in a crowd, for example, and they start screaming and trying to lead to do some bad thing, like a lot of the looting and stuff, is at some point a leader of a mob, or what becomes a mob. So at first it's just a collection of people, but they'll make the wrong short-term decision because they're using the wrong mechanism, the one that's not appropriate for most decisions. And it's the fight or flight mechanism, and so looting and stuff like that is part of the fight kind of mechanism. But in the long term, people stood back and said, wait a second, I could get arrested, I could go to jail. Is it really worth endangering myself, the people around me, to bring shame and disgrace onto my family and so on? Okay. So, and today's show is called Tenacity, and so periodically I talk about Mr. Trump, and okay, fairly, I don't speak of him in very positive terms. And I guarantee you it has absolutely nothing to do with Republican versus Democrat or liberal versus conservative or anything like that. It has totally and completely everything to do with his mental state and his personality. And of course, his mind and his personality are tied together. Obviously, they're one and the same. And so if I had to say, if you looked at Mr. Trump and you said, what is something that he's like, a characteristic of his that is, his so-called superpower, if you will, his greatest strength in getting or allowing him to achieve things that he wants to achieve, it's tenacity. It's tenacity. Mr. Trump has gone through his life and basically, in my mind, it looks like, he's an adult spoiled child, someone that just keeps pressing a particular issue well beyond, many times beyond, many hours, days, months, years beyond what most of us would do. Most of us would give up on some of these things that he pursues. But Mr. Trump basically has this narcissistic, which means he's totally self-centered, totally focused on himself, and he has this tenacious approach to achieving things that are in his best interest, or what he wants from the rest of the world. He is extremely tenacious. Tenacity. So he's like a bulldog. He gets hold of something and he will not let go. And the problem with that is that in our current situation, where kind of we let the technology get out ahead of us a little bit here. There's all the internet communication capability and all the different ways that you and I, any of us, can receive information these days. And it becomes these bullhorns of propaganda is what it really has come to. And I totally tell you that things like CNN and Fox News and on both sides of the aisle, there are definitely bullhorns of propaganda for certain agendas. It's true. And I've spoken about this in the past that we just oversimplify. We far oversimplify these arguments again. And so I just want to show you this picture. So I went to the post office this afternoon. I had to mail something to somebody, and sure enough, I'm following behind somebody, and I'm gonna take this and send you this. There's the picture. I hope you can see that. Okay. Now, this is a picture. This is a kind of a beat up old car driven by a fairly old white male. And what is happening here? What is this a great demonstration of? Well, it's what I've been talking about, that these issues, the people who are trying to control us, to drive us into these tribes, to try to drive a wedge between us, between brother and sister, between neighbor and neighbor, they are oversimplifying us, and they're oversimplifying the issues, and they end up assigning, 1, 2, 3, 4 word phrases that they can use to press the hot buttons of emotion. So, America first, okay? God and country, Trump. Stand up for your country. And then this one, the one at the bottom, want higher taxes? Vote Democrat. Okay. Folks, please. This kind of rhetoric, this kind of oversimplification of who we are and the issues before us is exactly why there's so much anger, why you are feeling so much anger, so much frustration, so much disrespect for other people in your neighborhood and in this country, is because you are allowing people that are trying to control you, that you are allowing them to control you. You are allowing them to push your emotional hot buttons. America first, okay? God and country. And then this thing about, Democrats being like, these spenders or whatever, versus Republicans who supposedly over time have supposed to have been more fiscally responsible and trying to shrink government while Democrats generally try to increase it, okay? And like all these phrases, okay, there are tiny elements of these simplified things that are true. I mean, America should take care of itself, okay? But America first, you have to be careful with that because we are on a globe that we share. This is our only home, and we have to be cooperative with the other countries around the globe to the extent that it makes sense. There's this global cooperation. It's America first and taking it to just this simple thing of always America first, always, always, always. Well, this is very easy for Mr. Trump because when he walks into the room, guess who's first? Mr. Trump. He doesn't give a damn, a rat's ass. Mr. Trump does not give a rat's ass about another human being on this planet. And so he can really strongly and forcefully and enthusiastically push this agenda of somebody first. And in his case, it's Trump first. And then but he says it as America first because he knows that plays on the sentiments of a certain percentage of the population that feels like, their position in the world has been degraded or whatever. And frankly, it's white males is a big part, older, middle-aged and older white males are feeling like their position in the world is being degraded. And to some degree it is, to be honest, because it should be. You see, people that look like me, people that drive this car, we have had a significant advantage, and it's inappropriate, honestly, for us to have had it. But I want to go back to the tenacity thing. This is a real problem because Mr. Trump is just absolutely tenacious, okay? And we have this thing called free speech in the United States of America, and there are people who drive cars like this who are obviously completely tied in with the rhetoric coming from Mr. Trump and his entourage, okay? And so they're tied into it. They're just blindly believing everything that comes from these folks. And so if Mr. Trump loses the election, and it's looking more and more like he probably will lose the 2020 election, you can count on, even if he voluntarily steps down from the office of the presidency, because of Mr. Trump, because of his tenacity, because of his Trump first, Trump cannot be seen as a loser. There always has to be an excuse. There's going to be this constant drumbeat from Mr. Trump, and I mean constant. He is going to be tweeting at 3 a.m. for the rest of his natural life about how the election was rigged and it was stolen, and 150 million seabirds voted because that's what he's decided is the latest conspiracy. And this is going to go on and on and on, and folks that drive cars like this are going to blindly buy in to that rhetoric. And there's going to be a tremendous amount of anger and frustration in a minority of the population, and things are going to get bad because Mr. Trump will never let it go. And this is the one thing that has been a hallmark of the United States of America and the so-called peaceful transition of power is that when you lose, even if it's only by a small amount, or even if you lose the popular, or you win the popular vote but you lose the electoral college, you lost. okay, and you say, okay, you know, I don't like the result. You know, I think some of the things were questionable, but in the end, I lost, and so I'm done. But Mr. Trump will never quit. And this, you're going to see that this is going to be a problem. And folks driving cars like this are going to be, it's going to be a real problem. We may truly have a fire, you know, a live fire, true civil war. This may be a true outcome of Mr. Trump being president of the United States. All right, so for the Pro and Con Show, my name is Michael James Ott, and until the next show, bye for now.